The stars stretched endlessly across the dark canvas of space, cold and distant. Among them, 300 warships moved like predators stalking prey. Their crystalline hulls reflected the light of distant suns, creating an intimidating display of power that had broken the spirit of countless civilizations before even a single shot was fired. Grand Admiral Kelrath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. His four eyes scanned the tactical displays with practiced ease. Behind him, junior officers worked silently at their stations, monitoring the fleet's progress through the hyperspace corridor. They would arrive at their destination within hours. The target was a small blue planet in an unremarkable star system. The locals called it Earth. Intelligence reports indicated a primitive species that had barely mastered fusion propulsion. They were divided into hundreds of tribal groups called nations, constantly fighting amongst themselves over resources and territory. It was textbook prey behavior. Kelrath had conquered 47 worlds during his career. This would be number 48. He expected it to be routine, perhaps even boring. The primitives would see his fleet, panic, and surrender. Within a week, Earth would be processing raw materials for the Kelrath Empire. Within a month, the surviving humans would be integrated into the Imperial workforce. It was the natural order of the galaxy. The Emperor himself had authorized this conquest. Vorthax III wanted the Sol system for its rich asteroid belt and the planet's abundant water. Kelrath had been given clear orders: offer surrender first, as Imperial law required, then proceed with subjugation by any means necessary. The hyperspace corridor began to collapse around them. Reality reasserted itself as the fleet dropped back into normal space at the edge of the Sol system. 300 warships materialized in perfect formation, their shields already active, weapons charging. On Earth, deep beneath a mountain range, Commander Han Jiwoo watched his display screens with calm focus. The Deep Space Monitoring Network had detected the incoming fleet 3 days ago when they first entered the outer sensor perimeter. Every nation on Earth had been notified. Every defense station had been activated. Jiwoo was a quiet man in his late 30s with sharp eyes and steady hands. He had spent 15 years preparing for this exact moment. His entire career had been built around a single question: what would humanity do when the aliens finally came? Now he had his answer. He opened a secure channel to Lunar Base Command. Dr. Yoon Mirai appeared on his screen, her face calm despite the gravity of the situation. Behind her, scientists worked frantically at their stations, running final checks on systems that had never been tested in actual combat. "They're here," Jiwoo said simply. "I see them," Mirai replied. Her fingers danced across her console, pulling up detailed scans of the alien vessels. 300 ships. Their technology profile matches what we expected from the intercepted transmissions. Antimatter power cores, plasma weapons, adaptive shields. Can we beat them? Mirai allowed herself a small smile. "Commander, we can erase them." 50 years ago, Jiwoo's grandfather had been the first to detect alien signals. Dr. Han Sung-ho had been a radio astronomer, searching for signs of extraterrestrial life. What he found changed everything. The signals were military transmissions from the Kelrath Empire, discussing their latest conquest. The messages detailed their methods, their weapons, their complete disregard for primitive species. The world's governments had faced a choice: ignore the threat and hope the aliens never came, or prepare in secret for the inevitable. They chose preparation. Every major nation contributed resources to a single unified project. They called it the Manhattan Protocol, named after humanity's first great weapons program centuries earlier. For 5 decades, humanity built weapons in secret. They constructed shipyards on the dark side of the moon, where Earth-based telescopes couldn't see. They hollowed out asteroids and filled them with weapons platforms. They developed technology specifically designed to counter Kelrath shields and armor. And they maintained the illusion of being primitive. All advanced military assets were hidden. The world continued to appear divided, weak, and unprepared. It was the greatest deception in human history. Admiral Choi Dae-hyun received the alert in his office aboard the UESC flagship Indomitable. The ship was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid, invisible to enemy sensors. Around him, 1,100 other warships waited in similar concealment, their crews ready. Choi was a veteran of 40 years, though he had never fought in a real space battle. No human had. All of his training, all of his preparation had been for this single engagement. He stood slowly, straightening his uniform. All ships, this is Admiral Choi. Activate Ghost Protocol. Move to attack positions. Wait for my signal. Across the solar system, human warships began to move. They remained invisible, their exotic matter hulls bending light around them, their power signatures masked by quantum dampening fields. They were ghosts in the darkness, surrounding the alien fleet like wolves circling prey. Grand Admiral Kelrath initiated the first contact protocol. His communications officer broadcast the standard ultimatum on all frequencies, translated into 47 galactic languages. The message was simple: surrender immediately or face extinction. He expected a response within hours. Primitives usually needed time to argue amongst themselves before accepting the inevitable. Some tried to negotiate. Others begged for mercy. A few very foolishly attempted to fight. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Kelrath frowned. Were the primitives too scared to respond? Or too stupid to understand the message? Scan the inner system, he ordered. Locate their major population centers. Prepare a demonstration strike on their moon. A small one. Just enough to show them we're serious. His tactical officer began the scan. Almost immediately, warning indicators flashed across the display. Admiral, I'm detecting unusual energy readings throughout the system. Multiple sources. They're everywhere. Kelrath leaned forward. Explain. I don't know, sir. The readings just appeared. Thousands of them. They're surrounding us. Before Kelrath could respond, his view screen changed. A human face appeared, calm and composed. The alien spoke in perfect Kelrath, his accent flawless. I am Admiral Choi Daehyun of the Unified Earth Space Command. You came to conquer our world. You will not leave this system alive unless we permit it. You have underestimated us. That was your first and final mistake. The screen went dark. Kelrath's 4 eyes widened as his sensors finally penetrated the human stealth technology. 1,200 warships appeared on his tactical display, completely surrounding his fleet. They had been there the entire time, invisible and waiting. For the first time in his 47 conquests, Grand Admiral Kelrath felt something he had never experienced before: fear. 50 years earlier, Dr. Han Seung-ho sat in his small observatory, staring at the data streaming across his monitors. He had spent 20 years searching for signs of intelligent life in the universe. Tonight he had finally found it. But the discovery filled him with dread rather than joy. The signal was strong and clear. It was a military transmission, encrypted but not well enough to hide its basic structure. Seung-ho had spent 3 months breaking the encryption. What he found made him immediately contact every government on Earth. The transmission was a battle report from something called the Kalreth Empire. They had just conquered their 840th star system. The report detailed their weapons, their tactics, and their complete lack of mercy for primitive species. Any civilization that couldn't defend itself was either enslaved or exterminated. The message included a star map. Seung-ho's blood ran cold when he calculated the Empire's expansion pattern. They were moving steadily toward the Sol system. At their current rate, they would reach Earth within 50 to 70 years. The world's leaders gathered in secret. For the first time in human history, ancient enemies sat at the same table with a single purpose: survival. They faced a simple truth. If the Kalreth came and found Earth divided and weak, humanity would be conquered or destroyed. They created the Manhattan Protocol. Every nation contributed scientists, engineers, and resources. They pooled their knowledge and technology. They built weapons in absolute secrecy. And they maintained the appearance of being a primitive, divided species. The deception was crucial. Kalreth scout probes occasionally passed through the outer solar system. They saw exactly what humanity wanted them to see: a planet full of primitive beings using chemical rockets and basic fusion drives. They saw nations arguing over territory and resources. They saw no unified defense, no advanced weapons, no threat. They never saw the construction facilities on the dark side of the moon. They never detected the shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt. They never noticed the quantum computers buried deep beneath Earth's surface, designing weapons that would make Kalreth technology obsolete. Dr. Yoon Mireille had been 5 years old when her parents explained why they worked such long hours at a secret facility. They were building humanity's shield, they told her. They were making sure that when the monsters came from the stars, Earth would be ready. Mirai grew up surrounded by the greatest minds humanity had ever assembled. She studied physics, engineering, and xenotechnology. By 25, she had earned 3 doctoral degrees. By 30, she led the Ghost Protocol project, developing stealth technology that could hide entire fleets from enemy sensors. The Ghost Protocol used exotic matter to bend light and radiation around objects, making them effectively invisible. But Mirai went further. She studied captured Calreth sensor technology from their scout drones. She learned exactly how they detected enemy ships. Then she designed countermeasures that exploited every weakness in their systems. The result was perfect stealth. A human warship using Ghost Protocol was completely undetectable until the moment it chose to attack. Not even the Calreth's most advanced sensors could find it. Mirai tested the technology repeatedly, refining it over 15 years. She knew it worked. But she also knew they would only get one chance to use it. If the Calreth discovered Earth's true capabilities and escaped to warn their empire, humanity would face an enemy that would never underestimate them again. Admiral Choi Dae-hyun joined the Unified Earth Space Command when he was 20 years old. Back then it was called the Solar Defense Initiative, and it consisted of 50 people working in a basement. By the time he was 60, it had grown into a military force with over 2 million personnel. Choi had never wanted to be a warrior. As a young man, he had studied history and philosophy. But when he learned about the Calreth threat, he understood that someone needed to stand between humanity and extinction. He volunteered. He rose through the ranks not because he was aggressive or ambitious, but because he understood strategy better than anyone else. He studied every military conflict in human history. He analyzed Calreth battle reports obtained from hacked transmissions. He spent decades developing a single doctrine, the Existence Erasure Protocol. The concept was simple but brutal. When the Calreth finally came, humanity would not fight a conventional battle. They would not give the enemy time to assess the threat or call for reinforcements. They would strike with such overwhelming force and speed that the enemy fleet would simply cease to exist before they could transmit a single distress signal. It was ruthless. It was absolute. And it was necessary. Choi handpicked every captain in the Ghost Fleet. He trained them personally. He made sure they understood that hesitation would doom humanity. When the order came to fire, they needed to execute without doubt or mercy. The Ghost Fleet grew slowly over the decades. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering. They used quantum entanglement weapons that could bypass conventional shields. They carried dimensional phase torpedoes that could shift targets partially out of normal space. They had railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to near light speed. But the most important weapon was the neural mesh AI called Athena. Mirai had designed it specifically for fleet combat. Athena could process billions of tactical calculations per second, coordinating the attacks of 1,200 warships with perfect precision. No organic mind, human or Calreth, could match her speed. Commander Han Ji-woo, grandson of the man who first detected the Calreth threat, grew up knowing his life had a single purpose. His grandfather had discovered the danger. His parents had built the weapons. Now it was his generation's duty to use them. Ji-woo joined the Deep Space Monitoring Network at 18. He spent 20 years watching the stars, waiting for the enemy that his grandfather had warned about. He never married, never had children. His entire life was dedicated to the defense of Earth. When the sensors finally detected the incoming Calreth fleet, Ji-woo felt a strange mix of fear and relief. Fear because humanity's survival now hung in the balance. Relief because the waiting was finally over. He activated every defense station in the solar system. He notified Admiral Choi. He watched as the Ghost Fleet moved into position, 1,200 invisible warships forming a perfect sphere around the predicted entry point. The Calreth arrived exactly where Earth's analysts predicted they would. 300 warships, confident and arrogant. They broadcast their ultimatum, expecting fear and surrender. Instead, they found humanity's true face. Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Choi gave the order that would change human history. Deactivate Ghost Protocol. Let them see us. Let them understand what they've awakened. 1,200 human warships appeared on Calreth sensors simultaneously. The alien fleet found itself completely surrounded, outnumbered 4-1 by vessels whose technology they couldn't begin to understand. Choi opened a channel to the Calreth flagship. He spoke calmly. his words carefully chosen. He wanted the Calreth Admiral to understand that this was not a battle. This was an execution. You came to conquer our world. You assumed we were primitive. You assumed we were helpless. You were wrong on both counts. Humanity has been preparing for this moment for 50 years. We have built weapons specifically designed to destroy you, and now we will demonstrate why you should never have come to our system. Choi closed the channel. He turned to his weapons officer, Commander Han Jiwoo, who had transferred to the flagship for this historic moment. Commander, you may fire when ready. Jiwoo's hand hovered over the activation panel. He thought of his grandfather who had discovered the threat. He thought of Dr. Mirai who had built the weapons. He thought of all the humans who had worked in secret for 5 decades to reach this moment. He pressed the button. Athena took control. The neural mesh AI called Athena processed the battlefield in ways no organic mind could comprehend. She saw every ship, every weapon, every shield frequency. She calculated firing solutions for 1,200 warships simultaneously. She identified the optimal strike pattern that would eliminate all threats in the minimum time possible. She had been designed for this single purpose. Now, after decades of simulations and planning, she would finally execute her programming. The attack began. In the first second, Grand Admiral Kelrath was still trying to understand what he was seeing on his tactical display. 1,200 human warships surrounded his fleet. His sensors were screaming warnings, but the data made no sense. The power readings from the human vessels exceeded anything in Calreth records. Their weapon signatures were completely unknown. He opened his mouth to give orders. He never finished the sentence. Quantum entanglement beams lanced out from 600 human warships. The weapons worked on principles that violated Calreth understanding of physics. They didn't travel through normal space. Instead, they created paired quantum states between the weapon and the target, then collapsed those states in a way that disrupted matter at the atomic level. The beams passed through Calreth shields as if they weren't there, because to the quantum weapons, the shields literally weren't there. They existed in normal space, but the weapons briefly existed in a quantum superposition that ignored conventional barriers. 53 Calreth warships, including 8 of the massive dreadnoughts, suffered immediate catastrophic failures. Their antimatter containment fields collapsed. The magnetic bottles that held antimatter fuel stable failed all at once. Matter and antimatter touched. The explosions were soundless in the vacuum of space, but they were brighter than suns. Each dreadnought's antimatter core contained enough fuel to power a small city for years. When it detonated, it released energy equivalent to dozens of nuclear weapons. The shock waves expanded outward, slamming into nearby Calreth vessels. Shields that could withstand plasma cannons and particle beams buckled under the raw force. Hulls cracked. Atmosphere vented into space. Grand Admiral Kelrath's flagship shook violently. Alarms blared across the bridge. His second-in-command was screaming something, but Kelrath couldn't hear over the chaos. He stared at his tactical display in horror. In 1 second, he had lost nearly a fifth of his fleet. The second second brought dimensional phase torpedoes. These weapons were Dr. Mirai's proudest achievement. They used exotic matter to briefly shift their targets into a parallel dimension, where the laws of physics were slightly different, just different enough that molecular bonds behaved incorrectly, just different enough that solid matter couldn't maintain its structure. 400 torpedoes struck 400 Calreth vessels. For a fraction of a second, the ships existed in 2 dimensions simultaneously. Their crystalline hulls, designed to withstand incredible stress, simply fell apart. The molecular bonds that held them together failed. The ships disintegrated into clouds of component atoms. 87 warships ceased to exist as coherent objects. One moment they were there. The next moment they were expanding clouds of debris, individual atoms spreading out into the void. Kelrath watched in absolute terror as ships around him simply dissolved. There was no fire, no explosion. They just came apart like sandcastles hit by a wave. His mind refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. The third second brought the singularity torpedoes. These were the weapons that had sparked the most debate among Earth's leaders. They contained stabilized micro-black holes, each one carefully maintained in a magnetic bottle. When they struck a target, the bottles opened and released their contents. A black hole, even a tiny one, is perhaps the most destructive force in the universe. Gravity so intense that nothing can escape, not even light. The micro-black holes created by human scientists were smaller than atoms, but their gravitational pull was immense. 134 Calreth ships found themselves suddenly dealing with singularities in their midst. The black holes consumed everything near them. Ship hulls, equipment, crew members all pulled inexorably toward the event horizon and compressed into infinite density. The gravitational stress tore ships in half. Those fortunate enough to be destroyed immediately were the lucky ones. Some ships were pulled partially into the black holes, stretched by tidal forces that ripped them apart molecule by molecule. The black holes had been programmed to evaporate after exactly 2.3 seconds. Hawking radiation caused them to lose mass rapidly until they finally ceased to exist. But in those brief seconds, they had consumed over 100 warships. Kelrath's flagship was still intact, but barely. Half his fleet was gone. The bridge crew was in shock, staring at displays that showed the impossible. Some were praying to gods they had stopped believing in years ago. The fourth second brought relativistic kinetic strikes. Hidden throughout the asteroid belt, dozens of railgun platforms had been waiting for 50 years. Now they fired. Tungsten rods, each one weighing several tons, were accelerated to 92% of light speed using electromagnetic forces that would have torn apart conventional materials. At such speeds, the rods became weapons of unimaginable power. When they struck, they released kinetic energy equivalent to nuclear detonations. Armor meant nothing. Shields meant nothing. The laws of physics became the weapon. The support vessels and troop transports positioned at the rear of the Calreth formation were the primary targets. They had lighter armor than the warships. They were designed to carry soldiers, not to fight. They stood no chance. The relativistic projectiles punched through them like bullets through paper. Each impact released a flash of light visible across the solar system. Ships were vaporized, their atoms scattered across millions of kilometers of space. In the fifth second, the last surviving Calreth warships attempted to escape. Standard procedure in an unwinnable battle was to retreat, regroup, and call for reinforcements. The surviving captains, acting on pure survival instinct, activated their hyperspace drives. They never engaged. Dr. Mirai's team had developed what they called reality anchors. The devices manipulated space-time in a localized area, creating a region where faster-than-light travel was impossible. The physics were complex, but the result was simple. The Calreth ships couldn't jump to hyperspace, they were trapped. The sixth second brought the final coordinated strike. Point defense lasers, operating at petawatt power levels, targeted the last surviving vessels. Unlike the massive weapons used earlier, these were surgical strikes. Precise beams of coherent light cut through hulls, targeting engines, weapons, and command centers. The lasers worked faster than human reflexes could follow. Athena controlled them all, calculating optimal targeting solutions in microseconds. Each beam found a critical system. Each strike was perfectly placed to cause maximum damage. Ships went dark as their power cores were sliced apart. Others tumbled helplessly as their maneuvering thrusters were destroyed. A few tried to return fire, but their weapons were disabled before they could charge. By the seventh second, only 26 Calreth vessels remained operational, including Calreth's flagship. They were crippled, weaponless, and surrounded. Admiral Choi opened a channel to the Calreth admiral. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Grand Admiral Calreth, your fleet no longer exists as a fighting force. You have two choices. You can surrender and be allowed to leave in your remaining ships to carry word back to your empire, or you can die here with your fleet. Choose now." Calrath's four eyes were wide with shock. His hand shook as he reached for the communication controls. He had conquered 47 worlds. He had fought hundreds of battles. He had never imagined defeat was possible. He chose survival. "We surrender," he whispered. Across the solar system, Commander Han Ji-woo reviewed the battle data. 7 seconds from first shot to total victory. 274 Calreth warships destroyed. 26 captured. 0 human casualties. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before beginning his report. His grandfather would have been proud. Humanity had faced its first test against an alien empire, and humanity had won. Dr. Yoon Mirai watched from lunar base as the surviving Calreth ships were herded toward the edge of the system. Her weapons had worked exactly as designed, perhaps too well. She felt no joy in the slaughter, only relief that Earth was safe. Admiral Choi Dae-hyun stood on his bridge, looking at the debris field that had once been a conquest fleet. He had won the greatest victory in human history. But he knew this was only the beginning. The Calreth Empire would learn what happened here, and they would respond. 8 months passed before Emperor Vorthax III finally accepted the truth. His conquest fleet was not coming back. 300 warships, including some of the finest vessels in the Calreth Armada, had simply vanished. The Emperor stood in his throne room on the Calreth homeworld, staring at the holographic star map that showed his empire's territories. 847 conquered systems, all marked in the deep purple of Calreth control, except for one small yellow star that should have been purple by now. Sol, the human system, the target that was supposed to be an easy conquest. Intelligence Officer Dravek stood before the Emperor, his posture respectful but his expression troubled. He had spent 8 months investigating the fleet's disappearance. His report made no sense, but it was the only explanation supported by evidence. The fleet's last confirmed position was at the edge of the Sol system, Dravex explained, manipulating the hologram to show the location. They transmitted their arrival confirmation and the standard ultimatum to the primitives. Then nothing. No distress calls. No battle reports. No debris signatures. They simply ceased all communication. Hyperspace accident? The Emperor asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Probability of an entire fleet suffering simultaneous hyperspace failure is 0.003%, Your Majesty. It has never happened in recorded galactic history. Natural phenomenon? A stellar event? We've scanned the area extensively. No anomalies. No radiation signatures consistent with a supernova, gamma-ray burst, or other catastrophic stellar event. The star is stable. The system is unremarkable. The Emperor's claws tapped against his throne, a sign of agitation that his courtiers recognized immediately. Then what happened to my fleet, Dravex? The intelligence officer hesitated. The only remaining possibility is enemy action, Your Majesty. But that raises questions we cannot answer. No known species in that region of space possesses the capability to destroy an entire Calreth conquest fleet. The humans are primitive, the Emperor said flatly. Our scouts confirmed it. Chemical rockets, basic fusion drives, divided tribal governments. They should have surrendered the moment they saw our ships. Yes, Your Majesty. That's what our analysis indicated. But analysis can be wrong. The Emperor stood abruptly. The Calreth High Council was assembled in the chamber. Dozens of the Empire's most powerful figures. They had been arguing for weeks about the appropriate response to the fleet's disappearance. The War faction, led by General Vexthor, wanted immediate and overwhelming retaliation. We send the Grand Armada, Vexthor declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. 3,000 warships. We glass their planet from orbit and claim the system's resources. We show the galaxy what happens when you challenge Calreth power. The cautious faction, led by Admiral Krenzoth, counseled patience. We don't know what happened to the First Fleet. Sending more ships without understanding the threat is foolish. Send reconnaissance probes. Gather intelligence. Then decide on a course of action. The diplomatic faction, smallest and least influential, suggested the unthinkable. Negotiate with the humans. If they somehow destroyed our fleet, perhaps we should reconsider conquest. Perhaps we should establish diplomatic relations instead. The Emperor listened to all arguments. Then he made his decision, driven by pride more than wisdom. He could not appear weak. If the galaxy learned that a primitive species had somehow defeated a Calreth fleet, the Empire's reputation would suffer. Conquered worlds might rebel. Allies might reconsider their allegiances. We will send a second fleet, Vorthax announced. 600 warships under the command of Admiral Threxval. They will investigate what happened to the First Fleet. If the humans are somehow responsible, Threxval will destroy them completely. No mercy, no survivors. We will turn their world into a warning to anyone who dares oppose us. Admiral Threxval accepted the assignment with grim determination. He was known throughout the Empire for his ruthless efficiency. He had never failed a mission. He had never shown mercy to an enemy. He reviewed every piece of intelligence about the Sol system, looking for anything that might explain what happened to Calrath's fleet. He found nothing useful. The humans appeared exactly as primitive as the scouts had reported. Their technology was centuries behind Calreth standards. They had no unified government, no fleet, no orbital defenses. On paper, they were helpless, but something had destroyed 300 warships. Threxavale was not going to underestimate them, regardless of what the intelligence reports said. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Commander Han Jiwoo monitored Calreth communication networks through quantum relay stations humanity had secretly planted in their territory. The technology was risky, as discovery would immediately reveal Earth's true capabilities. But it provided invaluable intelligence. Jiwoo read the intercepted reports about the Emperor's decision. 600 warships, double the size of the First Fleet. They would arrive in approximately 3 weeks. He immediately contacted Admiral Choi Dae-hyun. "They're not learning," Jiwoo said, frustration clear in his voice. "We destroyed their First Fleet in 7 seconds. We let the survivors go so they could report what happened. And now they're sending an even bigger fleet." Choi considered this carefully. He stood in his office aboard the Indomitable, looking at tactical displays showing the Calreth Empire's territory. The Empire was vast, powerful, and apparently incapable of accepting that a primitive species could threaten them. "They're operating on pride and momentum," Choi said finally. "They've conquered hundreds of worlds. Their entire culture is built on military dominance. They can't conceive of losing to us, so what do? We escalate. The first time we simply destroyed their fleet. This time we send a message they cannot possibly ignore. We show them not just that we can destroy their ships, but that we could destroy their entire civilization if we chose to." Dr. Yoon Mirai joined the conversation via secure link from Lunar Base. "You're talking about the Ragnarok Protocol." Choi nodded. "Yes, it's time. The Ragnarok Protocol was the most controversial weapon system ever developed by humanity. Even suggesting its construction had sparked heated debates. Some argued it was too dangerous, too provocative, too likely to escalate conflicts rather than prevent them. Others insisted it was necessary to ensure Earth's survival. In the end, they built it. But until now, they had never used it. The protocol consisted of several components. Planetary shield generators powerful enough to protect Earth from sustained bombardment by thousands of ships. Star manipulation technology that could cause controlled solar flares. Faster-than-light kinetic weapons that could strike targets light years away. And the capability to broadcast simultaneously on every Calreth military frequency. "If we use Ragnarok, we're showing them everything," Mirai warned. "Every capability we have. They'll know we're not primitive. They'll know we're a threat." "They already know we're a threat," Choi replied. "We destroyed 300 of their warships. What they don't know yet is the scale of the threat. The Ragnarok demonstration will make it clear. We're not just capable of defending ourselves. We're capable of destroying them completely." Jiwoo understood the strategy. "We give them a choice. Leave us alone and survive, or continue aggression and face extinction." "Exactly," Choi said. "But we have to be willing to follow through. If we threaten them and they call our bluff, if we're not willing to actually use the weapons we're demonstrating, then we've gained nothing and lost everything." The three of them sat in silence for a moment, each considering the weight of what they were about to do. 50 years ago, Jiwoo's grandfather had discovered the Calreth threat. Humanity had spent 5 decades preparing to defend itself. Now they faced a choice that would determine whether Earth remained safe or became a target for complete annihilation. "Activate the Ragnarok Protocol," Admiral Choi ordered. "Prepare for full demonstration, and send a message to all Earth governments. They need to understand what's about to happen." Across the solar system, human defense stations began powering up systems that had never been used outside of testing. Engineers checked and rechecked every connection, every power coupling, every targeting solution. Scientists monitored exotic matter containment fields and stellar manipulation arrays. Dr. Yoon Mirai oversaw the activation of the planetary shields. The system would create a protective barrier around Earth and Luna, strong enough to withstand sustained attack by thousands of warships. It was humanity's ultimate defense, and they were about to show it to an enemy that thought they were primitive. Admiral Choi stood on his bridge, watching the preparations. In 3 weeks, the second Calreth fleet would arrive, and they would learn a lesson that their empire had never needed to learn before. Some prey fight back, and some prey are not prey at all. Admiral Threxval's fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system in perfect formation. 600 warships, the largest force the Calreth Empire had sent outside its own territory in a generation. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, reviewing the tactical displays with cold calculation. The system appeared empty. No defense fleets, no orbital stations, no sign of the military force that had supposedly destroyed Admiral Kelrath's fleet. Threxval allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Perhaps Kelrath had simply been incompetent. Perhaps his fleet had suffered some catastrophic malfunction. Perhaps the primitive humans were exactly as helpless as the intelligence reports indicated. He activated the fleet-wide communication system and broadcast his message toward the inner planets. His words were chosen to inspire terror. Primitive inhabitants of Sol 3, I am Admiral Threxval of the Kalrath Empire. You exist because we permit it. You will end because we demand it. Your world will be cleansed. Your species will be erased. You have 1 hour to accept your fate. He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. Begin scanning for the previous fleet's debris field. I want to know what happened to them. 45 seconds later, every screen on every Kalrath ship displayed the same image. A human in a military uniform, sitting calmly in a command chair. Behind him, visible through viewports, was a blue planet, beautiful and serene. Admiral Choi Daehyun spoke in perfect Kalrath, his voice steady and measured. I am Admiral Choi Daehyun of the Unified Earth Space Command. 8 months ago, you sent 300 warships to conquer our world. We destroyed them in 7 seconds. Not a single human casualty. Not a single human ship damaged. We erased your fleet from existence and allowed a handful of survivors to carry word back to your empire. The image shifted, showing tactical footage of the previous battle. Threxval watched in growing horror as human weapons tore through Kalrath shields like they weren't there. He saw ships disintegrate, consumed by weapons he didn't recognize. He saw the 7 seconds of absolute destruction. Choi's voice continued, calm and implacable. You ignored our message. You sent a larger fleet. You threatened to cleanse our world and erase our species. You have made 2 critical mistakes. First, you assumed we were primitive. Second, you assumed we were merciful. The image returned to Choi's face. You will now witness what humanity is truly capable of. You will understand why you should never have come to our system, and then you will make a choice that will determine whether your fleet and your empire survive this day. The transmission ended. Threxval stood frozen, his mind racing. Before he could give orders, his sensors began screaming warnings. Around Earth and Luna, the planetary shield activated. Generators buried deep beneath the surface, built over 50 years by the combined efforts of every human nation, came online simultaneously. Exotic matter created a field that encompassed both worlds, a golden sphere visible from millions of kilometers away. Dr. Yoon Mirai monitored the shield from lunar base, watching power levels stabilize. The shield could withstand the combined firepower of 10,000 warships for years. It was humanity's ultimate defense, and it was only the first part of the demonstration. Threxval's sensors analyzed the shield. The readings were impossible. The energy output exceeded anything in Kalrath records. His science officer turned to him, face pale. Admiral, that shield could withstand our entire fleet firing continuously for decades. We cannot break it. Before Threxval could respond, humanity's second demonstration began. The star that humans called Sol, and the Kalrath designated as G2V4479, suddenly brightened. Human stellar manipulation technology, developed in secret over decades, sent carefully calibrated electromagnetic pulses into the sun's core. The result was a controlled solar flare, directed away from Earth but washing over the Kalrath fleet's position. The radiation wave hit Threxval's shields like a hammer. Ships rocked from the impact. Warning alarms blared across every bridge. The flare wasn't strong enough to destroy them, but that wasn't its purpose. The purpose was to demonstrate that humanity could weaponize their own star. Commander Han Jiwoo watched the demonstration from the Indomitable, thinking about his grandfather. Dr. Han Sungo had discovered the threat 50 years ago. He had warned humanity that the monsters would come. Now his grandson was helping show those monsters why they should be afraid. The third demonstration began before Threxval's fleet could recover from the solar flare. 3 human warships accelerated to faster-than-light speeds within normal space, something that violated every principle of Kalrath physics. They circumnavigated the entire Kalrath fleet in less than a second, their trajectories calculated to pass within visual range of every ship. Threxval watched in stunned silence as the human vessels moved at speeds that should be impossible. His science officer was frantically running calculations, trying to understand the technology. Admiral, they're moving faster than light without using hyperspace. Our theory says this is impossible. The energy requirements alone should tear their ships apart. Clearly our theory is wrong, Threxville said quietly. For the first time in his career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. The fourth and final demonstration was the most terrifying. From 2 astronomical units away, human railguns fired single projectiles at relativistic speeds. The tungsten rods, each weighing several tons and moving at 92% of light speed, passed within centimeters of each Calreth flagship's bridge. Threxville saw the projectile coming on his sensors. He saw the trajectory. He knew with absolute certainty that if the humans had wanted to, they could have destroyed his ship. Instead, the rod passed by so close that the ship's hull groaned from the gravitational stress of its passage. The message was clear. We can hit you anywhere, anytime, from any distance.
You are not safe.
You have never been safe. Admiral Choi's face appeared on every screen again. This time his expression was harder, his voice carrying an edge of steel. You have now seen 4 demonstrations of human capability. We can defend our world with shields your weapons cannot penetrate. We can weaponize our star. We can move faster than your physics says is possible. We can strike with perfect precision from distances your fleet cannot match. Choi leaned forward slightly. But you have not yet seen our offensive weapons. 8 months ago, we destroyed 300 of your ships in 7 seconds. We can destroy 600 ships even faster. We chose not to because we hoped you would learn. We hoped you would understand. We hoped you would leave us in peace. The image shifted, showing Earth from space, beautiful and blue against the darkness. This is our world. We have lived here for hundreds of thousands of years. We have fought, struggled, and built civilization. We have reached for the stars. And now you come to take it from us because you believe strength gives you that right. Choi's voice became colder. You were wrong. We are not weak. We are not helpless. We are humanity and we will not be conquered. The image returned to Choi. You now have 2 choices, Admiral Threxville. Only 2. Choose carefully. Because one choice leads to survival and the other leads to extinction. Threxville found himself leaning forward, hanging on every word despite himself. Choice 1. You leave this system immediately. You return to your empire. You tell them that Earth is forbidden territory. You tell them that humanity possesses weapons they cannot match and technology they cannot understand. You tell them that we destroyed your first fleet in 7 seconds and could have destroyed this fleet just as easily. You tell them that we chose mercy when we could have chosen annihilation. If you make this choice, your ships will be allowed to leave unharmed. We will escort you to the edge of our sensor range and then release you. Choi paused, letting that option sink in before continuing. Choice 2, you attack. If even a single one of your ships fires a single weapon, we will erase your entire fleet just as we did the first. Then we will track your hyperspace corridors back to your homeworld. We will not invade. We will not conquer. But we will activate a device that will broadcast throughout your empire, showing footage of what happened here, showing how the mighty Calreth Empire was humiliated by a species you called primitive. Every conquered world will see it. Every vassal species will see it. They will realize you are not invincible. Your empire will tear itself apart from within. The threat was not idle, and Threxville knew it. He had spent his career maintaining Calreth dominance through fear. If that fear broke, if conquered species realized they could fight back, the empire would face rebellions on hundreds of worlds simultaneously. You have 60 seconds to decide, Choi said. Choose survival or choose death. Choose wisdom or choose pride. Choose now. The screen went dark. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, absolute silence reigned. Every officer stared at Threxville, waiting for orders. Threxville's mind raced through his options. He could attack. His 600 ships might overwhelm the human defenses through sheer numbers, but the demonstrations had shown him the truth. The humans weren't bluffing. They had weapons the Calreth couldn't match. They had destroyed the first fleet in 7 seconds, and they could do it again. He could try to call for reinforcements. But the humans had demonstrated they could manipulate local space-time to prevent